So let's go over something where I'm not going to be trying to debunk something someone said. I'm going to be talking about how much I agree with them. Now, I want to obviously this is outside of my realm when we talk about politics and philosophy and religion, but this is still in my realm when it comes to gaming and how decisions. I talked about scalpers before, decisions from other people who are bourgeois, proletariat, however you want to word them, negatively affect other people who are also working class. But let's talk about what the actual companies do. That's bad. Now, I know there's going to be somebody who jumps up, no ethical consumption under capitalism. I get it. I do, but there are degrees to this. There are degrees to which, in our current system, a company should be doing things to actually be good to their people. Be good to the people who supply them with the money, the thing they need to live as a company. Those entities don't survive unless we throw money at them. So may I introduce you to a YouTuber who, if you are not watching, you should be, Liam Triforce. And he's actually got a wonderful tweet thread here that I want to go through because these are two companies that I have a lot of respect for. But just like with any other gaming company, that respect is tinged. It's tainted with something somewhere. So, let's go into the tweet because I agree with a lot of this stuff here. Liam Triforce. I may hate Valve's lack of communication, but many of their decisions have been to everyone's benefit, including their benefit. Nintendo is an abhorrent company. Many of their decisions embarrass their developers, fans, and the late Satoru Iwata. Well, they've been doing this shit since before Iwata, but here's some proof. Thread. Many times in the past, Half-Life modders have been hired and contracted to create some of Valve's most successful games of all time. TF2 and CSGO need no introduction. They rake in millions from Valve. Let's also throw in Portal, because Portal's development began as somebody's college thesis, and then Valve just looked at it and said, what if we hired you? They did this as well with Dota. When Dota was a thing that people played before we got stuff like League of Legends, the group that created it, many of them went on to make Riot Games and then turn that company into what it is today. But some of the people who were left over, one of them was IceFrog. And IceFrog had rights to the original code that was used to modify Warcraft 3 into Defense of the Ancients. And some of the stuff from StarCraft as well. And when Valve hired IceFrog, they got to have him help develop, and I might be missing a couple details here, but they got to have him help develop Dota 2. They took a fan mod and turned it into an official game, not the way League of Legends did, but they took the idea and created the game out of the idea, but they created an actual sequel to the mod as a standalone game. This is not the first time that Valve has done stuff like this, and other companies do this too. Look at Sega. What happened when Sega looked at Christian Whitehead? Sega saw him and went, you know what? You're doing some interesting mod work on, what at the time? He was doing a Sonic 2 mod. And they said, can you port that over to mobile for us? Maybe the same with Sonic CD. And he did. And eventually they just went, okay, cool. You can port these things and make them work well on mobile devices, something that notoriously barely plays those games very well, any game very well. So they ended up having him head a team to make Sonic Mania. Now, there are issues still with how the Mania team have been handled after that point. Apparently, there's some issues with financials that I don't know everything about yet. But the point is, just on a surface level, they took people who were so enthusiastic in their games that they were modifying them, changing them, etc., and hired them. Valve does this as well. So now we get into Project M. Now, I used to be a Smash Brothers tournament operator up in Calhoun, Georgia. I ran for Smash Brothers 4, though I participated in other tournaments. So Liam Triforce goes, Nintendo has deliberately circumvented modding in the past with Project M. This is true. I used to actually run tournaments back before it was called Project M. I used to run them back when we had Brawl Plus and Brawl Minus. This is stuff that I used to do back in high school. Despite the healthy competitive scene and benefits for charity through these tournaments, Nintendo began to involve itself in competitive Smash, and the developers feared impending legal action and ceased operations for stuff like Project M, which of course they do, because the way in America that your intellectual property works is that if you see an infringement on your intellectual property and you do not fight that infringement after you have been publicly made aware of that infringement, which of course if they were helping host at an event, they would be publicly made aware. If you do not fight for the intellectual property, you can lose the intellectual property. You might lose it, which puts you in a bit of a legal bind. Now, of course, that might sound like a defense for someone like Nintendo, but I'm not trying to make it that way. I'm not. They're like this with fan games, too. Nintendo cease and desists many fan games, even if they were made for no profit incentive at all, like AM2R. I've played through AM2R in its full form, and 10 years ago, I played the AM2R proof of concept, where all you had was a single room, and you had Samus with rudimentary abilities and Spider Ball. That was it. Just to prove that you could have a 2D Samus doing Spider Ball in a fan-made engine. I did not closely follow AM2R until it finally released, but I played it in its proof of concept form, and then 10 years later I got to play it in its full form, and I've got to say, AM2R blew me away. It was taken down after its 10-year dev cycle wrapped up, and it gained attention. Again, publicly made aware of the item, they have to go after the item. Chad is also saying they've shut down Pokemon Uranium as well. Again, that's another thing. Satoru Iwata has since been quoted numerous times. It would not be appropriate if we treated people who did something based on affection for Nintendo as criminals. Now, it should be noted that the AM2R thing and the Pokemon Uranium thing, these happened while Satoru Iwata was still president of Nintendo. He had not passed yet, which is why I pointed out that even if you are using Iwata's words here, as much as I think that they are poetic, it's still not the best defense, because this stuff was still happening under Iwata's watch. Again, I mostly agree with Liam, though. I do. This philosophy has been lost to corporate Nintendo. It arguably was never there, but said Valve, however, took one look at Black Mesa and then authorized the game for sale on Steam, among other kind gestures. It's a full reimagining of Half-Life, paying respect and significantly evolving every aspect of its design. So, let's take AM2R. What could have been done with AM2R, just as an example, or Project M? Project M could have been released as a full sister game to Melee, not Melee, but to regular Smash Brothers. It's already a mod of Smash Bros. Brawl. When they were releasing Smash Bros. 4, they could have had a separate mode called M mode, where it basically took all the mechanics of Project M and ran that way, and you could play in either standard Smash mode or M mode, creating no competition, and allowing the actual base that made this game to participate and help Nintendo with these things. If you're going to balance Smash, maybe getting competitive Smash players to help balance it would probably be a good idea, just saying. AM2R could have easily been put on the Nintendo 3DS eShop and become a handheld game that they could have sold there, or even just sold it on the Wii U at the time, because that was the console they had at the time that happened. And just going through a lot of that, we go to the next part from Liam here. The return policy for the Valve Index is exceptionally lenient. They also offer an unparalleled refund program for the games purchased, allowing you to refund any game under 2 hours of playtime within 14 days of purchase. Even this is flexible. Nintendo offers a 1-year warranty on Switch consoles. They do not offer refunds on any of their digital games whatsoever, and their proven hardware defect is apparently not a real problem. So, to give context for this one, I have a Switch. And, in fact, actually, I can show you a unique thing I have for my Switch. And this is not a positive thing, mind you. But this is my Switch game case. And if I open it up, I have in it, I used to have it here. I guess I don't have it anymore. But my Switch here, this blue Joy-Con is not the Joy-Con that came with my Switch. It's not. This Joy-Con, hell, you can even see behind me, there's another fucking Spare Joy-Con back there. Back. Nip. 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 There. There. That thing. Cameras, man. How do they work? Now, why is the Joy-Con on this console not the one that came with it? Joy-Con drift. Joy-Con drift is the reason why. I had to buy a new Joy-Con controller. Now, how much does a new Joy-Con cost? Go ahead, look it up. It's crazy. I can buy a whole new controller for the price of a single Joy-Con. Nintendo has been trying to fight a battle against its players for the past year and a half, 2 years, arguing that Joy-Con drift isn't a thing, but it naturally happens in all of their Joy-Con controllers, especially their left ones. Now, what is Joy-Con drift? Well, the way a controller works is that you have a joystick, and that joystick allows you to move in a video game, but it has what's called a centered position. But over time, the actual marker for what's considered the centered position starts to drift. Which means when your Joy-Con is in the neutral, when the joystick's in the neutral position, you shouldn't be moving in the game because your stick is here, but the neutral position has shifted over to here. It thinks you're moving up, down, left, right, depending on where the neutral position shifted. And this is a problem intrinsic to all Joy-Cons. It just happens over time. Why does this happen? We still don't entirely know, or at least I don't entirely know. If somebody has an article that explains why, then let me know. But Nintendo, instead of accepting the fact that there was a design flaw in the Switch, have been fighting tooth and nail to prevent Switch users from being able to affordably replace their items. And it's not just with that. Games that have voice chat capabilities in other versions of it, like take Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite, but I know that the Switch has voice chat capability built in. How do I know this? If you take a headset like this that has a single aux cord that has both the input and output audio built into it, and you plug that into your Switch, when Fortnite was first released for the Switch, you could actually communicate via voice with people in games like Fortnite. That was not an intended thing. It was just based on how the code in that game worked. So instead of that, though, what does Nintendo do for voice chat support for their players? They make you get an app for your phone to engage in voice chat, even though the Switch is perfectly fucking capable of its own voice chat. Why? That is an anti-consumer item. Hey, he's even got a video on the Joy-Con drift. Now, I don't want to continue going... Actually, you know what? I might as well go ahead and continue down here. Because Nintendo has issues with, of course, piracy. We all know, if you're a fan of Valve, Gabe Newell has some comments on piracy of video games. He thinks that piracy is about a service issue. If a pirate offers a product anywhere in the world 24/7, purchasable from the convenience of a personal computer, and the legal downloader has it region locked, and it will come to your country within 3 months of the United States release, you're probably going to buy from the pirate because, well, if you want your new video game, you're going to fucking get it. So, let's move on to the next issue with Nintendo, and that is pricing of its games. Now, if you've ever gone into a GameStop and bought any game, first party or otherwise, what happens after about 6 to 8 months of that game being out? Price drops. Happens with physical copies. It happens with digital copies over on places like Steam. We're talking about Valve again. Let's look at what Nintendo does. So, if that's the case, I'd be pirating Nintendo's games from now on. When they port old games, they port them for $60. They don't make their older games accessible to newer players. If you want to play a Nintendo 64 game right now, what legal options do you have? Because the Wii's shop, which originally had N64 games, is basically gone. What legal options do you have? Find the old cart, hope it fucking works. Find an old N64, hope it works, and then go on your merry way. Or you can use an emulator. That's free. Emulators are also legal. Now, ROMs, that is where the conversation changes a little bit. But let's say I wanted to play the best Paper Mario game, Thousand Year Door. Oh, because Nintendo doesn't offer this item to any of its players on any of their consoles except the original one, if I want to play Thousand Year Door, $102. $102. And Star Raptor, yes, the eShop is still on the Wii U, but the eShop on the Wii U does not have the same library of games that the one on the Wii did. And even that eShop, even with the full library that was on the Wii, it still was not the entire N64 library. Nintendo still had a lot of their classic games completely locked out. About the only one on here that I actually was kind of okay with was the Metroid Prime trilogy coming out in its $60 form. Because that was 3 games, but even then, there were 3 games with enhancements. Metroid Prime 1 got bloom lighting enhancements. Motion controls were added to everything. If you've ever played the Metroid Prime series, they are actually infinitely better with motion controls than they are without, because their motion controls are very close to PC controls. But aside from that, which even then is a stretch, let's take a look at Mario 3D All-Stars, which I have not purchased and I will not be purchasing. They decided to release these 3 games in a world where the Crash Trilogy and Spyro Trilogy exist. They decided to release these 3 games at full price with no enhancements. Well, the Crash Trilogy and Spyro, why do those matter? Well, because Crash and Spyro were the other competitors with Mario in the 3D space around the same time. The Crash Trilogy and the Spyro Trilogy both got full HD upgrades, both got complete overhauls of their graphics engines, and even got tweaked controls, for better or worse, for more modern audiences. What did we get with Nintendo for $20 more? Well, we got 4:3 aspect ratio Mario 64 in all of its original glory, insofar as you can consider Mario with linked primitives glory. Mario Sunshine with all of its glitches intact, and a lot of the functionality stripped away from it because, well, in the original release of this game, you couldn't use a GameCube controller with it, and Nintendo Switch controllers do not have analog triggers. They have digital triggers. So what's the difference? Well, an analog trigger means that depending on how hard I pull the trigger down, it will register a different sensitivity there, and the game actually had that as an internal mechanic. Now, I know that GameCube controllers are available on it now, which is good, but again, not available on release. And this game had a limited window of release. You could only purchase it within, 4 months of it coming out, 6 months of it coming out. After that, well, I guess you are going to have to deal with the scalpers. Now, it's not just a limited release for the physical game, it's limited release for the digital game, too. It's literal, artificial supply constraint with no reason for it. And again, unlike the Crash and Spyro trilogy, when we got these games, we got no enhancements on them. In fact, actually, for the case of Sunshine, for the case of all of these, there's some downgrade to playing it on the Switch. With Mario 64, we got the Shindo edition, which means things like the backward long jump don't work. With Mario Sunshine, analog control was taken out in the original version, and camera inversion was in there before they had to patch more customizable camera in. Again, a lesser version of the original. And if you look at Mario Galaxy, the original way Mario Galaxy controlled, you had your Wiimote pointed at the screen to collect star bits. That option is taken out in this version, and if you play it, you have to use kind of like a gyro thing to pick them up. And when you play the game in handheld mode, you have to collect star bits with the touch screen while playing with the controller with the buttons. It's just a downgrade. But Nintendo is very proud of this downgrade. They're very proud of this. Most repulsive, and Leon Triforce goes on, most repulsive, however, is that this worked. The Mario 3D All-Stars collection sold over 5 million copies. They could release these games separately after March, but, 5 million copies for inferior versions of each and every game with no effort put into their port jobs at all. Why? Liam then goes on to point out that Valve's entire catalog of 22 games is available for purchase on Steam for less than the price of Mario 3D All-Stars. Developers at Valve have since worked tirelessly to make these games run on modern PCs. Half-Life, despite being 22 years old, still runs like a dream, unlike the updated versions of Mario. But of course, the most infinite recent event, Nintendo taking down the Big House due to its use of Slippy. Due to the current global pandemic, NetPlay has allowed many people to continue with Super Smash Bros. Melee tournaments. It's not illegal to do, but Nintendo wants people to think that it is. Nintendo appreciates the love and dedication to the fighting game community that they have for the Smash Bros. Series. We have partnered with numerous Smash Bros. Tournaments in the past and have hosted our own online tournaments. This is all a platitude because they're about to bring you down. Unfortunately, the upcoming Big House tournament announced plans to host an online tournament for Smash Bros. Melee that requires use of illegally copied versions of the game in conjunction with a mod called Slippy during their online event. Nintendo therefore contacted the tournament organizers and asked them to stop. They refused, leaving Nintendo no choice but to step in and protect its intellectual property and brands. Nintendo cannot condone or allow piracy of its intellectual property. According to legal precedents, emulation is legal within the United States. Unauthorized distribution of copyrighted code is illegal, according to both country-specific copyright and international copyright law under the Berne Convention. Oh, hey, look! My legal copy of Melee! Oh, darn. And of course, what could Nintendo do to solve this problem? Oh, it would be very easy. Give us a version of Melee on the Switch for $10 or $20 with NetPlay enabled. But they're not going to do that. They're instead going to shit on their player base. They're going to shit on the people that make their company run. And of course, it will work. It will work. No, emulators are not illegal. Emulators are legal. Emulation of games is not illegal. And ROM distribution is the issue. But I can copy a ROM of a game that I own and play it on an emulator. Or even just have the emulator and play it, like if I've got the game on a disc and put the disc in and then run it on the emulator, that's perfectly legal. And of course, we get into the leftist side of things. Nintendo is Japan's richest company. Do they need to do any of these things? No, they don't. But they do. But they do. So, now, why is this an issue? Well, let's talk about the fact that a lot of people who are going to be disproportionately affected by this are, of course, people who don't have a lot of means. Also, in general, if you are a company who is hurting your base, the people who let you run, but you do it in such a way that it doesn't look like a publicly shitty thing to do. It looks like a thing you had to do. Oh, we had to protect our intellectual property. Oh, we had to do this, or we had to do that. When all you're really doing is just abusing the people that make your company do what it does. I love Nintendo games. I do. I've loved every Super Smash Bros. Game, including Brawl. I've loved almost every Mario game that I've played, with maybe the exception of 3D World. Wasn't a big fan of 3D World. I have loved practically every Metroid game I've stepped into, except the original edition of Metroid 2. And, of course, Zelda. I've got a laundry list of things to say positively about Zelda. Nintendo has some of the best games, classically, in the company. They're the Disney of video games. But like the Disney of video games, they're becoming a corporate monster. And are destroying the people who actually made them who they are. And I don't think it's a good thing. I don't. They have the ability to be better, but here's the thing. What's the incentive to be better if you're already the richest company in Japan? If you're the richest company in your area, what is the incentive to improve? I don't know if there is. I don't know if there's any incentive for them to improve. So, I guess this is just a plea. And also, this is me just pointing out that if you haven't seen Liam Triforce, you should. But aside from that, this is just a plea. Don't let shitty companies continue to do shitty things. If you wanted to play all of the new 3D Mario games, well, I guess the old ones that were being ported as new, you had options of doing that without capitulating to Nintendo, but of course people still did. Over 5 million people still did. The Switch's install base is 70 million right now. It is currently one of the most well-selling consoles in the world in its lifetime. Nintendo is riding high, and they have no reason to improve. But I hate that they're able to ride high with mediocrity. As a fan of Nintendo, it honestly pisses me off. And I really would wish they would do better.